Welcome to Crohn's and Colitis Canada's first youth education series event for this fall. We're talking Transitioning 2.0, the change from full-time student to full-time employee while living with Crohn's disease or ulcerative colitis. Welcome to the wonderful studios here at Crohn's and Colitis Canada in Toronto. My name is Rashid Clark. I'm the Marketing and Communications Coordinator here at Crohn's and Colitis Canada. I also have ulcerative colitis, had surgery for it, and I live with a pelvic pouch. And as you can see, I am working full-time here. I also was a student, so I can speak to this topic to a degree. But luckily, we have someone here who can speak even more knowledgeably to the topic, and that's Rachel Meehan, who joins us live from Sudbury. Hello, Rachel. You can just wave to the people.
Hi, Rashid. Everyone.
Rachel, thanks so much for joining us and spending your time with us tonight. A reminder for everyone watching the broadcast live, we'll be going through topics relating to employment, especially making the change from being a full-time student to a full-time member of the workforce. And if you have any questions or comments as we go along through the Facebook Live chat tonight, please enter them in the comments thread just below, and we'll try to get to as many questions of yours as we can as well. We'll pop up some comments as we go along tonight. So the whole point is that this is interactive. It's not just us talking heads here talking. So a little bit more about Rachel Meehan, who is right now living in Sudbury. She is the Director of Alumni Relations at Laurentian University. That sounds like a proper, legitimate full-time job. Rachel was diagnosed with Crohn's disease 11 years ago and still is doing well, persevering despite the challenges that come about as a result of inflammatory bowel disease. And she recently completed her Master's of Arts in Leadership degree from the University of Guelph. A little two-timing your own university there, Rachel. And also, Rachel was a 2016 AbbVie IBD Scholarship recipient. So she is well qualified and well versed. And thank you again, Rachel, for joining us here tonight.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so let me just do a quick check of the comments here. Just a reminder that if you have any questions or comments as the event goes on, just enter them down in the comment thread below this live video, and we'll get to as many questions of yours as we can tonight as things go on. So thanks again for joining us. And I'm just going to take a quick look at the feed that we have right now, just to make sure if we have any questions already off the bat. If not, we do have a number of questions already in store for Rachel and I to talk about tonight. So a quick check here, and we see a few people are watching and no questions yet. So hopefully we'll get more as the evening goes on.
Okay.
So Rachel, again, thanks again for joining us. First question, when you were making the change from full-time student to full-time employee, did that change moving into the working world feel daunting at all, or was it exciting? How did you feel about that impending move?
Definitely some mixed emotions. I had worked part-time while going to school for a long time, and then sometimes I was working full-time while going to school. So the transition was gradual, and kind of interchangeable. But I want to say, for the most part, I felt excited. Excited to start something new, and that's just kind of my personality. So I like trying new things. But there's always that little worry in the back of your head, right? Like, oh, how am I going to cope? Like, what happens if I get sick? Am I going to be tired? When you're a student, you have the ability usually to customize your schedule. Like, you have to be in class, but if you're tired, you can nap and then you can get up and do your homework after. You have that flexibility. When you have a 9-to-5 job, you don't really, so you never know what that's going to look like on days when you're sick. So it's hard, but I think that for the most part, I was pretty excited and a little scared, but I think one of the things that I try to tell everybody living with inflammatory bowel disease is that you can't let anything stop you, right? So, even if you're scared, you continue to persevere and you just deal with things as they come. So just, that's it.
Yeah, agreed. And I think for me, I generally felt the same way. I was kind of excited to be getting into the full-time working world. If anything, that was a little bit daunting was just the actual process of applying for jobs and trying to find a job. I think that was maybe the more stressful thing than even the concern about how my IBD would react once I actually got that full-time job. I think maybe one of the issues that came up for me, and maybe other people had this experience as well, was that when I was a student in university, I had some pretty good drug coverage through my student union. Yeah. So at the time I was taking medication for my ulcerative colitis, and all of that was covered. So that felt that was great. I mean, it was a big expense taken care of. And one of my concerns was that going into the working world, now I lose that coverage, and there's going to be at least a little bit of a gap between student and full-time employee when I might have to pay for things out of pocket as I did. It just so happened for me that after I graduated, the medication that I was on stopped working.
Oh.
So that was bad, but in a way it also it moved me over to a different treatment, which was actually a little bit more affordable. And so through that, I kind of caught a little bit of a break, if you want to look at it that way. And that the drug coverage wasn't too much of an issue for me, but I'd certainly had that concern as a student before I graduated and moved into full-time employee status.
For sure.
So was there anything at all that you were really looking forward to as far as being a full-time employee, or did you feel like this was an opportunity to maybe prove yourself in spite of living with Crohn's?
I feel like that I'm every day. Everything that I do is really about proving what you can. So I definitely was looking forward to that, but also for an awareness piece. So that's the other thing, is when you work with people, they don't realize what Crohn's or colitis is, and it's a really good opportunity to let people know what you have to deal with and the things that you're still able to take on and you're still able to do. But we have a real opportunity when we get to work with people, or just when we're surrounded by people, to let them know what Crohn's and colitis really is, and then that's how we're going to move forward with this.
Absolutely. And just as we go along, a little reminder to people, we're using this technology for the first time, and I'm pretty excited about it. So we can pop things up on screen like this. And so just a reminder, if you're watching, any questions you may have, or even just comments about your experience making that transition from full-time student to full-time employee, just let us know in the comment section, and we'll try to pop them up on screen as we did just now. And if you're not impressed by that, well, I don't know. I guess I can't help you right now. So Rachel, again, yeah, a very good point on just always trying to prove yourself. I think that was something that I wanted to establish as well when I got my first position out of university, was proving not just to the people that hired me, but proving to myself that I can still contribute, I can still do well, I can still be a good employee in spite of living with this chronic disease.
Absolutely.
So now, going through the job application process, did you at all disclose your IBD at any point during that job application or job interview process?
I didn't. It's not because I was afraid of saying anything. I just didn't see a natural place for it to come up. And I don't try to focus on it, right? Like, I know that I live with Crohn's disease, and it does affect a lot of my life. But I try not to focus on it. So I try to live my life to the best of my ability. And I don't mention it because I don't think that it's relevant. And knowing how much I've been able to accomplish with the disease, I don't think it'll really affect my employer unless I'm, high stress or in the middle of a flare up or something's going on. Otherwise, I've been very fortunate to work for employers who have been really accommodating. So they're not sitting there counting how many times I'm going to the washroom in a day or anything like that. I just don't, if somebody were to ask me, and, I've mentioned once I've started working somewhere, I usually tell my boss about it. And then sometimes my other colleagues too. And it's just so that there's, you hope for that there's some compassion there, and that people give you a little bit more understanding. But no, I've never mentioned it in the job application process.
Okay, makes sense, and I think a lot of people probably would lean that way.
Mm-hmm.
And just a note for people going through the interview process: at no point are you required to disclose medical conditions, in the job interview or at any point during the application process. Just to bring another perspective on it, though, for me, I did disclose that information off the bat in my cover letters and in my resume, for the reason that I saw it as a positive, as a strength of mine. And I think for me, personally, a lot of the work that I did at university was around raising awareness of the disease and trying to educate people about the condition, about IBD as a whole. And so that, kind of worked to my advantage, in that was something positive to actually put on the resume and say, I've taken this disease, but I've taken ownership of it. And, I'm trying to do some good with it in my life, as a young professional. And so depending on how you actually, handle living with IBD, and I'm not saying everyone has to go out and be a public advocate of it. But I mean, if you do something positive with with the disease, if you volunteer, if you're a president of a club at your university that focuses on Crohn's and colitis, if you're providing your support to other people who live with the disease, that's all good information to tell an employer. I think those are all points they could actually win a job interview or over with. So, I mean, you can come at it in either way, but by under no obligation are you required to disclose that information about your health or about your background as you go through the job application or interview process. But I mean, at least for me, it eventually landed me a job here. So I'm gonna hope that.
If I was working there, like that would definitely, if I was applying, that would definitely make it into my cover letter, no question.
I think if someone was applying for a job here, that'd probably be the kind
to not mention
probably it. Yeah, you probably want to put that in all of your information.
So the point I wanted to add, Rashid, was that while I don't mention it in my cover letter, a lot of employers now with technology, they'll go and scope you out online, right? They're checking all your social media accounts and they're going to see who you are and what you're up to. And it's definitely on my LinkedIn that I volunteer with Crohn's and Colitis Canada, that I've won a scholarship for living with Crohn's disease. Or persevering with Crohn's disease. So I don't hide it. If anybody were to go and look me up, because I agree with you, like I consider them accomplishments. So I definitely have them on my LinkedIn profile. So if an employer were to go the extra step to go and do some digging on me, they would easily find it. And normally when people are volunteering for a health cause or something medically related, it's usually because they've been impacted by it. So people usually make that connection. So they might think that I have Crohn's or colitis. And if I was asked, then of course I would, I'd tell them all about it. But yeah, so that's just another way to look at it, I guess.
Yeah, and I think so we're getting a few more comments now from the people watching online, so thank you for that. And just kind of echoing one of the questions that we were just talking about, Stacy asked if you did disclose that you have IBD during a job interview experience, did you ever have a negative experience? So again, from just Rachel and I had pretty good experiences in disclosing that, because again, I think I tried to turn it into a positive, so that worked out well for me. However, we do have a comment here from Tammy, who said, I did once, as in, I'm going to assume that she's meaning I did once disclose the IBD during a job interview, and worst mistake I ever made. So I hope that wasn't a result of the IBD being brought up as a reason that you didn't get the job. But if that is the case, it's a difficult situation to be in, and again, that's why it comes down to each person's own comfort level in talking about their IBD and whether it's something that they do want to disclose during the job interview process or even after the fact when you do have a job.
And that's what I was going to say too. I've been very fortunate that when I do tell people, they're usually really receptive to it. But I think, it's a bit of a warning sign. If you do tell your employer in the interview stages, or even once you've started working there, hopefully that's not the case. But if you mention it in the interview stages and it's not well received, like maybe there should be some warning signs going off that this isn't who you want to work for anyway, right? Like if somebody's not receptive to your health and your well-being, that personally, that's not somewhere I would want to work.
That's a good point. I mean, a bit of a red flag, and maybe
absolutely
maybe a good thing that you didn't get the job.
Dodged a bullet, I think. So
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And just a couple of other comments. This one just more general from Jill. Hi, Jill from Waverly, Ohio, and I'm a crony. So hi, Jill. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for commenting. And from Ohio, hello. Thank you for being with us here. So we'll just keep the conversation going. Again, if you have questions or any comments about your experience making the change from full-time student to full-time employee, just drop them in the comments section and we'll get to more of them as the night goes on. Cool. And just to take a little bit of a break to remind everyone of some upcoming webinars that we do have scheduled on October 18th at 7 o'clock Eastern. We'll be talking about mental health and IBD. And on October 24th, we'll be talking about budgeting as a student living with Crohn's or colitis, again, starting at 7 o'clock Eastern. Both of those will be webinars, and you will have to register for that in order to watch, so I hope you do. And you can learn more about the webinars and sign up at our website, crohnsandcolitis.ca/webinars. Plug done for now. And we'll get to more of those as we go on. And Tammy Ford, neat technology. I agree, Tammy. Thank you for letting us know. This is a brave new world that we're exploring here today, and so far I think we're having some fun with it. Yeah. So that's good. So now, uh, let's say someone has landed a job and they are in a position that they feel comfortable disclosing their condition to their employee, to their boss, to their fellow employees. What do you think would be the best way of going about that?
I would just ask if they've heard of what Crohn's disease or ulcerative colitis is, for starters, and then if not, then you have the luxury of informing them and teaching something to someone. And I think I would just explain, sometimes some of the stigmas that are associated, some of the things that people will naturally assume, and you might want to clarify that these, I don't know, people don't always know. So like you kind of want to tell people what it actually is. And then you say, like these are the things that affect me. Like I lack energy a lot. I find myself that I'm really tired. There's certain foods that don't sit well with me. But, this is the reality of my life and I live with it and I work with it, So you should know that it doesn't, for the most part, it doesn't prohibit me from doing my daily job. But if I am suffering, like I'll probably let you know. And if you could help me out, like I would really appreciate it.
Yeah, and I think you raise a good point that it's there's always an opportunity to educate. You always have those sort of like
Absolutely.
teachable moments where you want to talk to your fellow staff or your boss and just let them know I may not be in the best shape all the time, but that's not a reflection of me all the time, and I can still do a good job. I can still get my work done. And I think being just, my personal take on it here, I think is being proactive about it is definitely beneficial. When you wait until a flare-up comes on, it may not be the best time, but also it does provide a pretty legitimate reason as to why you can't be in the office or why you may need a little bit of extra help. But if you let people know ahead of time, I think maybe that makes it a little bit easier down the road if things do come up. There'll be a little bit more understanding, and maybe accommodations can be made ahead of time so that, let's say you need to be a little bit closer to a washroom or you need to do some flex hours at work and spend more days working from home, maybe that sort of stuff can be arranged. Because generally more workplaces are understanding. I think bosses are pretty understanding of the challenges that these diseases bring about. And if they don't know, again, teachable moment to let people know, like, this is not, something kind of mild and I just need to use the bathroom a little bit more often. Like, there are some pretty serious consequences that can come from the symptoms of the disease. So it's a chance to let people know, just what you're living with. Again, a reminder of just how strong you are because you are able to work, in spite of the challenges of IBD, and giving people an opportunity to hopefully make it a little bit easier for you if and when the time comes up that you have to deal with a flare-up or any other symptoms.
For sure. When you speak to that accommodation piece, and I can't remember if we're speaking about this a little bit later, but I've been fortunate enough, like I've mentioned, to work for some great employers. And I guess in 2011, I spent 6 weeks in the hospital being prepped for surgery. I've had an ileocolic resection, and my employer allowed me to work from the hospital because I'm not kidding. I was sitting there killing time, like just being fed intravenously. I couldn't go home, but I was feeling okay. I just needed to get ready, so they didn't want me to leave the hospital. So I sat there with my laptop and I just worked. So I was able to work remotely. And in one way it was great because I wasn't just sitting in the hospital looking at four walls all day for 6 weeks. It kept me busy, kept me preoccupied, not worrying about my upcoming surgery and what this would mean. And, so there are a lot of employers that are willing to be accommodating. So, once you let them know, then hopefully, again, you're working for the right company that'll be able to work with you.
Absolutely. And again, just another comment again. Thank you, Tammy, being a very active commenter tonight. Educate for sure and look into any formal accommodations the employer may have to offer and get it in place ASAP. Definitely helps. And understandable because, when you have those accommodations already lined up, then it's a little bit easier to access if the time does come up. I mean, we all hope that the time doesn't arrive, that those accommodations are needed. But again, Rachel, as your story illustrates, I think a lot of people with IBD are willing to work just whenever, wherever they can. If that means, from home, if that means from a hospital bed, whatever it may be. I mean, it's, I think we're always looking to prove to others as well as to ourselves that we can do just about everything that we can compared to normal people. So, I think it's important to get that information, in the heads of your supervisors and other coworkers, so those accommodations can be made.
For sure.
And we'll just bring up another comment here from Sar. I'm a contractor and I travel around the GTA all day long. Sometimes it's hard to find a washroom, but I manage. So, Sar, thanks for the comment. And I think an experience that a lot of us can probably relate to as far as washroom access is concerned. So, I mean, when you're a contractor, a little bit tricky because, you know, you're moving from one job site to another. If you're working in an office, maybe a little bit easier because you have you know, a ready set washroom already in place. But I guess just a question to Rachel on that topic is, has washroom access ever been an issue that you know, raised with your employers?
With sure, I shouldn't say that. With my employers, no, not really. I work at a university, so there are washrooms all
There
over
are
the place.
washrooms at the university. Good to know.
Yeah, that's just I'm fortunate enough in that sense that there are several of them. So no, not an issue for me. But I do travel a lot for work. And as universities or public sector, they're always trying to crack down on how you're going to save money. So they often try to get me to share a room with somebody, and I've kind of had to push back to say, no, like it's not because I want to be difficult, and if I could save the university money, I'd be happy to. But I use the washroom a lot, and it's not like I'm bunking with my partner or my best friend. Like, it's a colleague, so when I'm in the bathroom at all hours of the night, or 4 times in the morning before I leave to start my day, like I don't want that. So at the university, I'm very lucky. When I've traveled, I've had to push back, and it's for the most part it's worked. Like, nobody's forced me to share a room. So that's the only issue that I've encountered regarding washroom access.
Likewise, in my experience, I think, again, because I was upfront with my employers when I went through the application process, and even soon after starting the job, I did let them know that there may be occasions where I'll need to use the washroom a little bit more regularly. So I guess more than anything, I just wanted to make sure that they weren't alarmed by the fact that I was going a little bit more often. And in my case, since I live with a pelvic pouch, I do use the bathroom more often than the average person would. But also, if anyone else has a J pouch, sometimes it takes a little while to get a proper clear out of the pouch. So that can mean not just increased number of trips to the washroom, but you can spend a little bit more time in there just making sure that you're not having to run back and forth even more frequently. So again, disclosing all that information up front made it a lot easier. And again, people were understanding. And as long as I get back to work and do my job and do it well, then I mean, everyone was pretty fine with it all. And I think that's the most important thing, is that we want to make sure that washroom access is there. And as long as we can carry on our job otherwise unimpeded, we're going to do just as good a job as anyone else.
Absolutely.
So let me take a little look through the comment thread here.
Rashid, I'm going to give a shout out to my peeps in Sudbury. My chapter's meeting tonight, and they're supposed to be watching. So I want to say hello, awesome people. Thanks so much.
Hey Sudbury, welcome to the live chat, and by all means, drop us some comments to say hello. And thank you for interrupting your regularly scheduled chapter meeting, and thank you for letting Rachel get out of the chapter meeting tonight so she could be part of this here on our live Facebook Q&A. So this is, sorry, Rachel, I'm blocking off a bit of your face, but this is one comment here from Karen. Once you get to know your employer, talk to them about your situation. I made the mistake of not doing that, and my coworkers didn't understand my situation. Once that we had the conversation, they designated one of the washrooms as female. I was the only female at the building, so they made a change to try to help me. So really good story there from Karen. Yeah, and really good example of, I'm going to let you see your face again. Really good example of workplaces being understanding and making accommodations when necessary. So, pardon me, Karen. Thanks for that comment.
Awesome, Karen.
And again, just a reminder to everyone watching, we're talking today transitioning 2.0, making the change from full-time student to full-time employee while living with Crohn's or colitis. And if you have any comments about your experience making that change, or just the working world in general, or if you have any questions for either myself or Rachel Meehan, our guest here tonight, just drop them into the comments, and we'll get to as many of them as we can and pull them up on screen with our fancy new technology, which I cannot stop talking about. I apologize. So we'll move on to our next question. Rachel, when you got your first job offer, Did you do anything to prepare for your first day or first week on the job? Anything special to get you ready for the working world?
For sure. I made sure that everything. So think about when you have a flare up and you have to eat all your, your white breads, your soft foods. You're not doing anything like that. I think the whole week before I started my new job, I made sure that I was just eating things that I knew weren't going to send me into a tailspin. So I modified my diet for a week. I made sure that I was sleeping a lot too, so that I was rested to start this new job. I'd say those were probably the two major things that I did. They were things that I felt were in my control that would set me up for success in my first week on the job.
Right. And I think, again, we touched on this a number of times tonight, letting my employers know about my condition and about my potential needs as a result. I think that's the first thing that I talked about on my first day on the job.
Yep.
And it was just beneficial to let everyone know right off the bat, here's my whole situation, and I'm going to do my best not to let it get in the way of my regular duties and regular 9 to 5 hours, but just let everyone know that this is the situation. And I think from a more logistical standpoint, I did bring with me a couple of extra pairs of underwear, just as a backup. I brought an extra pair of pants and just sort of tucked them away in the bottom drawer of my desk. And in the 2 or so years I was at that job, I never had to use them. I think probably because they were there. If they weren't there, then chances are I would have needed them, because that's just how life works. But I think having some spare clothes at your office, not a bad idea. You can just tuck them away in a drawer, hopefully at your workspace, and hopefully you'll never need them. But knowing that they're there in an emergency probably helps, just knowing that they're there. And again, for the folks with pelvic pouches, calmeseptine ointment, which is something that is good for preventing butt burn. That's just what we call it, butt burn. Again, something else that I kept with me at my desk. Very rarely, if ever, used it, but just another nice to have. So it's good to be prepared for those eventualities. Of course, we all hope that it doesn't come to it, but we always want to have those backup plans in place.
Yeah, it's the same thing. If you look in my desk drawer now, I've got a mini pharmacy in there, just things, that my painkillers for days that I'm not feeling well, or, something like a Pepto when I'm not feeling well either. I also keep peppermint tea. So I find that that's really soothing too on days where my tummy is upset, and it's a comfort for me as well. So yeah, those are, they're just good things to have on hand. Like, I don't usually leave home without them anyway. So, but yeah, I definitely keep them in my desk.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if there are foods or beverages that you find help sort of quell some of your symptoms or just make you feel a little bit more at ease, good idea to keep them at your workplace so that they're ready when you need it. So we'll get to a couple more comments here. Sorry, Rachel, I don't mean to keep blocking your face here. From
It's okay.
From Babak, I hope I'm pronouncing that name correctly. I studied when I was really sick and had to be hospitalized many times, even surgeries, and all the profs were helpful and even gave me the option to do exams from home. Work is totally different. Been working with IBD for the past 8 years, and we have 10 days sick leave per year, a couple of days working from home. That's about it. So again, workplaces, from one to the other will have different options in terms of sick days and days of leave. But just a point, again, when we're talking about, before you make that change from student to full-time employee, if you are still a student, maybe getting through your last round of exams, again, good idea to bring up some of your conditions with professors so that they know that there may be a need to have you do an exam from off-site, outside the university. And again, a lot of accommodations can be made because, in general, I think, at least from our experience, we found that people are pretty understanding once you let them know exactly what it is that you're dealing with.
For sure. Most colleges
Yeah.
and universities usually have like an accommodations office too, or like a student disabilities office. And they're not all there yet where they're including IBD as a disability, but some of them are. So it might be worthwhile, as a student, to go and check out to see what's available to you. If you need it, then if you don't need it, then great. And if you do need it, then it's there for you to fall back on. Again, it's kind of that peace of mind knowing that should something go wrong, you have something to rely on.
Absolutely. And speaking to in case things go wrong and having something to rely on, from KR, I also leave a change of clothes at work with me, and I always have Depends on me, just in case. Always helps with the anxiety. Absolutely. Uh,
Yeah.
and you know what? I've used some of that adult underwear as well, or I guess adult diapers as well in the past. It's just good to have them on hand, or if you know that you're going through a particularly tough time, anything to deal with the anxiety is certainly beneficial. And let's see, one more from KR. Sorry, Rachel, again. I think it definitely helps to be honest with your employer about your disease. I mentioned it in my interview and got hired. I'm a kindergarten teacher and I don't always have access to a washroom, but once I told my employer that sometimes I need access to a washroom right away, we put a system in place. I even had to take a leave of absence and I was fully supported by admin and the staff. Just be open about it. Great point, KR. Thank you for that.
So
And again,
great.
accommodations, I can see why, I think some people may be a little bit hesitant to ask for it because you don't want to feel as though, you're dependent on other people making changes for you. But you know what, you have to be able to look after yourself. And I think a lot of people are pretty accommodating and understanding because they want the best for you, as you should do.
For sure. I mean, and let's not forget, we have to tell people that like we poop a lot. It's not like it is the easiest thing you want to bring up either, right? It's not how I broke my ankle, and like people can tell that you're in a cast or whatever the case is. Like, no, like I poop a lot, several times a day. So it's hard to even bring that conversation up. But I'm so glad that everybody's sharing their stories. I love how accommodating that all these employers are being. It's so encouraging for us.
And exactly, even when you break an ankle, it's pretty visible to people.
Yeah.
You can always lie and say that you broke your ankle playing sports when you actually broke it walking down the street, as some people
Or
have.
running to the washroom. Yeah.
So again, thanks again for all the comments. Please keep them coming. We'll get to more of them as we go on through the night. But just another question to keep the conversation going. So in talking to your coworkers, supervisors, bosses about your IBD, after those conversations, has anyone changed their perception of you, or have they treated you any differently?
No, I wouldn't say so. I've got some people who are a lot more like they pay more attention. They ask me more about my health and how I'm feeling. And then there's some people that it's as if I never said anything. Like they just, sometimes I have to remind them saying like, no, like I have to go to the washroom now, or no, I can't share this hotel room with you, or no, I can't, but no, treated me differently, like discriminated against in that sense, I would say definitely not.
Absolutely. And again, luckily, I've had the same situations. No one's really treated me any differently, or treated me as though they were feeling sorry for me. Never received anything like that. I think when the accommodations have been offered or made, it's just generally been from a perspective of understanding, from a feeling of compassion more than pity.
Absolutely.
And I think that certainly helped, in establishing those relationships with other coworkers, because sometimes you have to see these folks 8 hours a day. You're around them quite a lot, and I think I've been fortunate at least to have developed good relationships with people even after disclosing everything about IBD. So we'll get to another comment here from Hindi. I've lived with Crohn's for, I'm going to guess, the last 50 years. And thankfully, all of my employers were very understanding. Always have a pair of extra underwear with me. And employer has been accommodating for all of her appointments. So again, some really good examples that we're getting today of people who have had accommodations take place. Sometimes it's just for the appointments because we do tend to see doctors more often. We may have more appointments at clinics for other treatments. So there may be time missed for work, not just because of symptoms, but because doctors need to be visited and clinics need to be visited from time to time. So again, thanks to everyone for the comments. Please keep them coming in the thread right below the video. And thanks again for watching. So next question for Rachel. Have you ever pushed yourself to go to work when you haven't felt very well and probably shouldn't have pushed yourself to go to work?
Definitely. Definitely. Probably the wrong thing to say, but it's just the reality. Do I pay the price for it? Absolutely. Have I gone to work and left halfway through the day because I made the wrong decision in the morning? Yep, I've done that too. because you're like anybody, you're always worried, right, about your attendance record and what happens if I'm sick and I'm not in a day, I'm not in again, I'm not in again. So you do go and you're like, oh, it's not that bad. I can probably make it through, or and then it progresses through the day and it's just worse. Those days, though, I've got to say they're definitely not my most productive days. I'm just feeling tired. I'm feeling sore. I'm running to the washroom all day long. It's not great, but yes, I definitely have done it. Guilty. Yeah.
Yeah, I've done that. I know myself a number of times as well, and I think some of that is, maybe just the character of individuals where
Yeah.
you don't want to be seen as though you can't do your job, and so you keep pushing yourself and going to work even though your body is telling you really this is not a good idea. And just to share a story, I used to work in broadcasting, and I was a traffic reporter, and I used to. There were times where I went to work in the middle of a flare up, like a pretty bad flare up, and I'd have a number of live reports going like every few minutes, and somehow, some way, I don't know how I did it, in retrospect, but I would do a live report, I'd hang up, I'd go run to use the washroom because I was in a flare up, I'd go clean up, come back in time for my next live report, and kind of consistently did that, over the course of maybe a 4 to 6 hour shift. And I don't know why. I couldn't just tell, my bosses, hey, I'm really sick and I can't come in today. I think at the time I was, part-time and, just wanting to prove myself and wanting to show everyone that I can, still do my job and do it well. I think some of that pride kind of clouds your judgment when your body's really telling you, like, this is a really stupid thing to be doing. And I, admittedly have had accidents at work when, I've been at my job when I should have been at home. So, if anyone can take anything from that very personal story, is that, do listen to your body and, don't feel as though, you're letting yourself or you're letting your employees or you're letting your coworkers down by taking a day or two or several off of work, because, your body needs its time to properly heal so you can be the best employee that you can be.
And that's what I was going to say. I've learned, right? So you do need to take that time, because I'd rather take the time and fully recoup and then go back feeling 100% than constantly just giving 30, 50%. You know what I mean? Like, your employer wants you to be working at 100%. So you know what? Take the time and just get better and then go back and be able to give it your all.
Absolutely. So we will bring up another comment again here from Karen. Thanks, Karen. So I was let go one time and told that it was because my job was taking a toll on my health. They used it as an excuse to let me go. I only missed 1.5 days for the year, so was really upset that happened, but was glad that I was clear of an awful environment. So again, Karen, thanks for sharing the story. And clearly something is amiss with that workplace, which shall not be named, because if you only take a day and a half off the whole year and still lose the job, it feels like there were other factors at play. And in the event that people may be in a position where they feel like they might lose their job as a result of their condition, if you do have an HR department, it's a good idea to maybe raise that topic with your HR department, see what mechanisms or laws are in place, because no one should have to lose their job just because of an illness. But you do want to advocate for yourself, and at least in Karen's situation, sounds like there was maybe a little bit more going on behind the scenes than we really know. But certainly a disappointing fact when people may have their careers cut short or lose jobs as a result of a condition. So we'll move on to a couple more questions here. Do you ever feel as though, I mean, when you have taken sick leave, and we kind of touched on this in the last question, like mentally, do you ever feel like you're not being the best Rachel possible when you take time off work? Do you feel like you're letting other people down? And how do you combat that if you do feel that way?
All the time. I think that's just part of my nature as well, whether I have Crohn's or not. Unfortunately, that's just kind of who I am. There's nothing I can do. I feel bad about it, but know that I am a really hardworking employee. And so when it comes down to it, I take the time that I need to make myself feel a little bit better, and then I just go back and I keep plugging away and doing the best that I can do. And that's all that any employer can really expect. But like I said, it is important to take the time you need, and I do feel bad about it. But at the end of the day, you got to put yourself first, and you got to put your health first.
Yeah, and I think kind of just to go back to that, one of my earlier stories, I definitely felt as though I was letting other people down when I did take time off, and I think it's just maybe something in people who have IBD, maybe we just have that character in us where we don't feel like we want to let other people down, or not feel as though the disease is somehow getting the upper hand and keeping us from being the best that we can be.
Yeah.
And I think it took me a long time to deal with that sort of guilt and that sort of feeling of letting other people down because I was sick. And it took me a long time to sort of change my mindset in feeling as though I myself am not a burden, but the disease that I have is the burden. And that took me a long time to sort that out myself, but I'm glad that eventually I did, and I'm not so afraid to to take time off when needed. So just looking back through some of our comments here, I did see a question earlier that came up that I'm going to try to bring up now. So just bear with me as I again use our new technology. And I saw it earlier. Here it is. From Stacy. Looking back, what would you say your top tip for students is starting their first job? So Rachel, I'll put that over to you first.
Yeah. I'm going to say it really is just taking care of yourself. Like, I think that's the best advice I can give to anyone living with IBD. And, starting your first job for sure is just make sure that you're not overexerting yourself, because I know myself, I aim to please, so I'm willing to go above and beyond constantly. But it takes a toll after a while. So I'm not saying not to give 100%, because you want to give 100% and you should be giving 100%. I'm saying don't give 150%, because your health will suffer for it. Your stress levels will be through the roof, and we all know what stress does for IBD. Just make sure that your health is number one, because you're no good to anybody if you're not healthy.
Everything you just said, I second that.
Thanks.
That's basically my tip as well. I know, it's especially for students making that change and now getting out into the working world for the first time. I think it's a little extra daunting if you have IBD, because just as a student out of school, you're in a mindset of wanting to prove yourself to your new coworkers, your new bosses. You want to let everyone know that you're a good candidate, that you're a good worker, and then on top of that, you want to let everyone know that you're not going to let this disease of yours get in the way. But I think that can lead to some, potentially downside. Can lead to some downsides, like the stress levels go up, like your IBD gets worse. So in trying to push yourself, you may be doing more damage for yourself than good. And I think listening to your body and knowing when to ask for help, I think is important. And above all, not looking at asking for help as a weakness, but rather a sign of self-awareness and self-compassion, that you're able to let other people know that you're going through a tough time, you just need some support, and then you'll be back to your best self once you have time to recover. So I think it's important to be able to communicate that to your coworkers and other bosses as you go along. So we'll bring up a couple more comments before we start to wind things down for tonight. And again, everyone who's dropped a comment in or asked a question tonight, thank you so much for doing so.
Thank you.
One here from Kenton. I found when transitioning from school to work, one of the biggest obstacles was I kept dealing with the schedule change. Getting proper sleep really helped keep me healthy. So a very good point. And actually, maybe one advantage to the working world outside of school is that if you have a regular set schedule, you can work your sleep schedule in accordingly. Whereas when you're a full-time student, you may have a class on a Thursday at 9 and then nothing on Friday and then something on Monday at 3. So your schedule's a little bit more scattered. So having that regimented schedule of a full-time job can actually be beneficial in lining other parts of your life up.
Yeah, I would agree that, and eating healthy too is probably the other thing, right? You're right. That is one of the great things. If you work a 9-to-5 job, that at least your schedule is set. Probably does help. And Kenton, great point about sleep. Like I often find I can't get enough of it, so it definitely helps if you can get some good shut eye.
Absolutely. And I mean, unless any of us have the luxury of a napping desk a la George Costanza. I don't think that we're going to be able to get those naps in at work. So getting proper night's sleep in between days on the job, obviously very important. So get that in as much as you can. So we've reached pretty much the end of our time here tonight. Rachel, Meehan, again, thank you so much for spending your evening with us, and again, sacrificing your presence at the Sudbury chapter meeting for tonight. And again, to the people out in the Sudbury chapter and everywhere watching across the country, and apparently from Ohio and other parts of the world as well tonight, thank you so much for joining us. A couple of reminders just as we wrap up. We do have more of our youth education series webinars coming up later this month, October 18th at 7 p.m. Eastern. We'll be talking about mental health and IBD, obviously a very important issue, not just for students, but for everyone who's dealing with Crohn's or colitis. And October 24th, we're talking about budgeting for students living with IBD. When you have cost of medications in addition to the cost of tuition and food and rent and everything else, it can be pretty daunting to keep all of that in order. So we'll have some pretty good budgeting tips for you so you don't go broke. That's October 24th, our budgeting webinar, again, 7 o'clock Eastern. Both of those webinars will not be on Facebook Live. They will be webinars that you'll need to register for. So please do so over at our website, crohnsandcolitis.ca. And if you go to crohnsandcolitis.ca/webinars, you'll get all the registration information and links there. So thank you again for joining us tonight. Hope to see you back for our other webinars later this month. Rachel, Meehan, again, the lovely and talented Rachel, Meehan, thank you for...
Thank you so much for...
Thank you again for being with us tonight, and for everyone watching tonight. Yes, right, Rachel, any final comments or parting shots as we wrap up tonight?
That you all tuned in tonight. Thank you so much. Thank you for supporting Crohn's and colitis. Thank you for tuning in and for trying our awesome new technology. Everything's been great. Comments, your questions, you guys give me hope. So thank you so much.
And I cannot get over how well this technology worked for today. And I hope I'm not jinxing it for future use. So again, everyone, thanks for watching and for following us on Facebook, as well as Twitter and Instagram at Get Gutsy Canada. We will talk to you soon, and thank you again for being with us tonight. Have a good night.